Hey guys, tonight we step barefoot into the warm hush of twilight, where the wind brushes through broken stone and the scent of ancient incense lingers like a memory. You stand before a half-buried temple, columns, cracked lintels, caved walls tattooed with sand-blasted glyphs. The air here doesn't just hum with silence, it trembles like something watching. A scorched breeze kicks up a swirl of dust that dances in place, then dies. And beneath your feet, a mosaic scorpion, black as spilled ink, curling around a faded throne no one has sat in for 2,000 years. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where we're dreaming from tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You slide your fingers across the sun-warmed stone. The glyphs don't just describe, they whisper. A goddess who walked like a woman, stung like a plague. Her name was Serket. You've heard it mispronounced a dozen ways in documentaries, Selket Serket, or just Scorpion Lady. But here in the half-light of her crumbling shrine, you feel her presence like pressure behind your eyes. You follow a trail of bronze, offering bowls long since emptied of wine and honey, down a set of worn stairs. One bowl still holds something dried-out lotus petals, and the carapace of a desert scorpion legs curled inward, as if in prayer. Cute. Or ominous. Maybe both. That's the thing about ancient gods. They don't retire, they fade into background radiation. The chamber opens wider. Pillars lean like weary dancers, each carved with scenes of Serket, in her many moods, tender healer, venomous judge-lover with 1,000 stingers. One relief shows her cupping a child's face in her hand, while another shows the same hand striking a king dead with a single jab. Apparently balance wasn't her strong suit. According to mainstream Egyptology, Serket was a protective deity, one of 4 goddess guardians of the pharaoh's organs, actually. The one assigned to the intestines, which feels weirdly appropriate. Her animal surprise was the scorpion. But not just any scorpion. Androctonus australis, the fat-tailed menace of the North African dunes. One sting, and your organs forget how to behave. But that's not what the fringe historians believe. Oh no. The other scrolls, the ones tucked into linen bundles behind sealed tomb walls, whisper of Serket not as a symbol, but as a literal being. A hybrid. A creature who walked upright, but carried venom not in a jar, but in her veins. Those texts claim she took lovers, and that just one, lived long enough to curse a dynasty. Which brings us to the prince. Outside, the last light curls like a cat at the temple's feet. You step outside again, tracing the scorpion mosaic backward, feeling that weird hum return to your palms. The wind tastes of copper now. And just over the next ridge of dunes, a different kind of memory waits to surface. The capital. Picture it walls of alabaster that glow pink at sunrise, terraces lined with wild papyrus, blue-painted courtyards where servants pad silently with trays of dates and doves, nest in fig trees no one's allowed to pick. This is where Prince Cain lived, or rather was kept. Born during a solar eclipse and a sandstorm, Khan was said to have the breath of the desert in his lungs, which was poetic code for sickly. His heartbeat fluttered like a moth's. His bones were so delicate the palace physician recommended wrapping him in goat's wool year-round. Not the toughest guy, but when he opened his mouth, he sang like a reed flute, thin and haunting, like he remembered something the rest of the world forgot. Historians still argue whether Cain was truly royal-blooded or the son of a concubine smuggled into succession after a palace fire wiped out half the royal nursery. The records are conveniently burned. But whatever his origin, Cain was beloved by the people and feared by the priests. That combo never ends well. And there's this one clay tablet chipped at the edges contains a single strange line. He was not born of woman, but of sting and salt. Cool, right? Or disturbing? Again, maybe both. Back at the temple, the wind dies down. The air stills. You realize you've been holding your breath. When you let it out, it feels like you're not alone. The scent of crushed herbs lingers again, faintly medicinal, faintly rotting. Somewhere far off, a cicada clicks once-twice, then falls silent. You walk back through the gate, and behind you the mosaic scorpion glows faintly just for a moment, as if remembering. You wake the next morning, or at least it feels like morning, even though no sun rises in the temple. Just a pale gold wash drifting in from somewhere. A light that seems to come from the stone itself, not above it. You step into the next chamber and realize you've slipped sideways in time again, because now you're watching the temple freshly painted voices murmuring in reverent tones, and in the center of the gathering, there she is, Serket. She's not like the other gods you've heard about in dusty museum lectures. No golden throne, no overdone eyeliner, no crook and flail nonsense. She moves like something born under hot stones, graceful, dangerous, patient. Her hair is coiled into a spiral crown that somehow looks both ceremonial and venomous. You count at least 6 scorpions clinging to her arms and shoulders like pets or weapons. The priests bow, the guards kneel, but Serket's eyes search for something else. Someone else. And then you see him. Prince Cain, age 7, still thin as bundled reeds, sits slumped on a cushion too large for his frame. His attendants hover like anxious flies. You can tell he's already tired of being treated like a ghost in progress. His lips are blue again today. Not metaphorically, literally, as though the blood can't be bothered to carry warmth. The chief physician, a man who looks like he's been embalming patients for practice, lays out his options before the Queen Mother. His tone is clinical, detached. He may not survive the week or the month. His humors are inverted. The gods must be displeased. Right, because it's always the gods when no one wants to admit medical school hasn't been invented yet. The Queen Mother turns, and you feel the room shift. She's not beautiful exactly, but she has that terrifying calm only mothers of dying children develop. And she's decided. Call her, she says. Let Serket do what men cannot. And just like that, the bargain begins. Now, historically, Serket's cult was centered in regions bordering the Sahara and the Nile Delta. She wasn't the most fashionable goddess, certainly no match for Isis or Hathor, but her worshippers were devoted, almost secretive. Fringe researchers believe her priestesses practiced venom alchemy, milking scorpions for ritual poisons, and allegedly developing antidotes so precise they could choose whether someone lived for 5 seconds or 5 years. But that's not what's happening here. Here, Serket steps forward herself. No intermediaries. She kneels impossibly low and brushes Cain's cheek with 2 fingers. He does not flinch. His eyes, dull a moment ago, now track her every movement. She speaks a single phrase. Will you borrow my sting? The room doesn't breathe. The prince, this frail boy with no future, nods once. And Serket stings him. Not a bite, not a theatrical gesture, no lightning flash or glowing aura. Just one swift motion. A black glistening barb, curved like a crescent moon, appears from under her wrist. It slips into the soft place just above his heart. His body arches, but doesn't scream. Instead, he exhales, as if something tight has finally released its grip. The priests panic, of course. 2 faint outright. One tries to call for the guards, but the guards do not move. They're transfixed, or enthralled. The Queen Mother just watches. By sunrise, Cain is still alive. By noon, he is sitting upright. By nightfall, he is walking. The official records note this as a miraculous recovery. The palace scribes switch to red ink to commemorate it. A feast is declared. Offerings are sent to Serket's shrine, alabaster jars of myrrh, scorpion-shaped amulets, even an elephant tusk inlaid with carnelian. But you're more interested in the boy, because over the next weeks, he doesn't just recover, he changes. His hands no longer tremble, his eyes no longer droop, his voice deepens, and something else, something harder to explain, begins to ripple just under his skin, like energy waiting to strike. Historians still argue whether this is metaphor or medical miracle. Some say it was an early experiment in venom immunotherapy centuries ahead of its time. Others believe Serket's sting was symbolic part of a rite involving herbs chants, and a placebo effect so strong it reprogrammed his cells. A few insist it wasn't magic or medicine. It was inheritance. They point to a line on a painted stela from the same era. The boy of venom and silk shall either rule or ruin. You trail the memory as Cain wanders the palace gardens alone but never lonely. He begins to notice things others can't behaving oddly, guards whispering from behind columns, a cloud formation that resembles a warning. His skin seems to grow warmer in the midday heat, not redder, just energized, like he's charging. And then one evening you catch him crouched by a stone basin holding a fat black scorpion in his hand. It doesn't sting. It walks his palm like a pet. You flinch, but he looks up and grins. "They don't hurt me anymore," he says. You blink. You're back in the ruins. The temple is quiet. The wind is dry and cool. But under your foot, something small and brittle crunches. A scorpion. Or at least, the shell of one. Empty. The palace glows honey gold in the morning, the way only sandstone soaked in centuries can. You trail behind Prince Kaon now, though no longer as a ghostly observer. You're tethered more tightly to this memory like the stone itself remembers and is pulling you deeper. You keep pace with the boy who's not really a boy anymore. He's 15 now, tall, sinewy. That odd fragility still clings to him in places his wrists are too thin and his shoulders slope like a heron's, but something in his gaze has shifted. There's calculation there now, confidence too, and a touch of danger. You follow him through the palace's shadowed corridors, where servants bow lower and linger less. Even the guards seem wary, standing straighter, their eyes following him a bit too long. Power has its own scent, and Kain carries it like oil on the skin. Not overwhelming, but it lingers. This morning, he's not headed to a throne room or a lesson in philosophy. No, he's headed to a quiet courtyard garden no one visits anymore, where the fig trees have overgrown the pergola and ivy spills from stone urns. A girl waits there, seated on the edge of a shallow fountain shaped like a lotus. Her name is Eset, daughter of a common soldier born far below the palace's marble floors. She's barefoot dust on her ankles, and her tunic is sun-faded and patched. But she's laughing at Kain. Not with him. At him. And that might be why he's in love. No titles, no ceremony, no coiling niceties. Just a girl with wide eyes, nimble fingers, and a talent for catching snakes bare-handed. He hands her a box carved from sycamore wood, inlaid with lapis. Inside, a scorpion. Alive. Of course. His name's Kain, says, sounding absurdly proud. He doesn't sting anymore. Eset snorts. You mean he hasn't stung you yet? She lifts the lid, studies the creature, then gently blows on it. It tucks its legs and huddles as if embarrassed. You'd think a royal romance like this would be the stuff of poetry, and maybe it was for a while. But love in ancient Egypt had a tendency to curl into something more dangerous when left untended, especially when one half of the couple glowed faintly in moonlight and whispered to insects. Fringe scholars believe Kain's recovery wasn't just a physical transformation, it marked a kind of possession or symbiosis. His blood changed, his pulse slowed. One ancient tablet even claims that his breath could calm venomous creatures within a 10-cubit radius. Sounds ridiculous unless you saw what happened when a cobra crossed his path. You did. It bowed its head. The temple records went quiet for a few years, but palace records, not so much. People began noticing strange things. Kain would disappear for days into the desert and return unburnt, unthirsty. At a hunting festival, he caught 3 leopards bare-handed and let them go. He stopped eating meat. Then he stopped eating altogether for weeks at a time. Just water. And sometimes not even that. Historians still argue whether these are embellished accounts, symbols of divine transformation, or actual observed phenomena. Some suggest the priests encouraged the rumors, hoping to leverage Kain's mystique into religious authority. Others think the priests were terrified, especially the high priest of Hathor. He called Kain Nesushedi, the hidden snake. Not to his face, of course. And then came the feasts. You watched the celebration unfold across candlelit halls and balcony banquets. Dancers whirl, perfume smoke curls upward like silk, dishes clatter, gold sparkles on every wrist, and at the center of it all sits Kain, serene in a chair that's not quite a throne, with Eset beside him, definitely not a queen, but not dismissed either. He eats nothing. She drinks only water. But others at the table, they feast, and they fall. One by one, nobles begin clutching their bellies. Some collapse immediately. Others stagger out into the colonnade gasping. A few make it to the palace steps before dropping like sacks of figs. The physicians are summoned. Ritual purifications are ordered. It's ruled as a bad batch of goose liver pate. Right. The palace staff whispers of poison, and all the victims had curiously opposed the queen mother's plan to elevate Kain to the throne. You see a younger scribe being questioned by a furious priest. He swears he saw Eset touch the wine jugs just briefly. The priest demands the girl be arrested. The guards hesitate, look toward Kain, do nothing. And so begins the palace's new era, one of velvet-wrapped threats and smiles with fangs. But it's not all venom and fear, because in the twilight hours, beneath the garden pergola, you see them again, Cain and Iset, side by side, feeding dates to a monkey who seems entirely too well-behaved. She teases him about his robes. He teases her about the scorpion that still sleeps on her windowsill. For a few minutes, there's laughter, something soft, real. Of course, soft things don't last in palaces. That night, a servant girl goes missing. The next day, a second. On the third morning, a priest is found dead, his skin marbled with blue. Whispers begin, not just of poison, of infection, that the prince's kiss brings sickness, that his blood carries sting. And once again, the queen mother calls upon the gods, not for help, for protection, from her own son. You feel the tension coil tighter in the palace air like a string pulled too far. Even the birds seem to sing less. Their songs, once flitting and flirtatious, now come out in single brittle notes, if at all. The halls are quieter, the lotus ponds ripple less. And the servants, they move differently now. Not slower, but smaller, as if trying to fold themselves out of sight. You follow Cain through this shifting space. He doesn't look frightened. If anything, he's more composed than ever, every gesture deliberate, every footstep balanced. But something about his eyes is different now. They linger on people like he's measuring them, not just seeing them. And his shadow seems longer than it should be, even at noon. You step into the royal chapel beside him. An emergency offering is underway. Scribes are inscribing hurried invocations to Ma'at. The high priest is dressed in full regalia, a leopard skin sash draped across his shoulders, his hair powdered with white chalk. He doesn't bow to Cain. He nods once curtly and begins the ritual. You recognize the signs. They're trying to purify him quietly without saying it aloud. It's not the first time something like this happened in Egyptian history. Actual records show us that when a pharaoh or heir was believed to be under the influence of foreign spirits, or worse, the favor of the wrong god, priests would launch soft coups disguised as spiritual interventions, a formal rebalancing of order. Sounds lovely, but it often involved forced exile or assassination. This time, though, it doesn't go to plan. Cain watches the entire ceremony with faint amusement. He allows the chants, the oils, the burning of sacred myrrh, and then, when the final priest raises the bowl of consecrated water to splash it on him, he steps forward. The priest flinches. The bowl tips. Water spills everywhere, steaming slightly as it hits Cain's feet. He says nothing, just smiles. Not cruelly, but with a confidence so complete it makes the air feel thinner. The next day, the high priest falls ill, blue-veined, cold-skinned. His breath slows, then stops. The cause is ruled heart weakness. Of course. And the queen mother. She disappears for several days into retreat, the scribes say. Some think she's consulting oracles. Others believe she's hiding. But when she returns, her eyes are lined with coal so dark it might as well be war paint. She calls a closed council. No record remains of what was said, but the outcome is clear. Cain is to be sent away. Officially, it's a pilgrimage, a journey into the desert to seek spiritual clarity. But the whispers say what everyone knows, it's an exile dressed in silk. Iset, to her credit, doesn't cry, not in public. But you see her grip the edge of a pillar until her knuckles go white. You see her sneak a folded cloth into Cain's hand as he mounts the sand sled that will carry him into the dunes. You even catch her whisper, "Don't die before I do." I hate that. Very romantic, very rude. And then he's gone. You travel with him now, bouncing gently on the wooden sled as it glides across the desert, pulled by a team of oxen and driven by a silent Nubian servant who never speaks, not even once. The landscape is brutal and beautiful waves of white salt flats, bones of ancient beasts bleached in the sun, the occasional cluster of thorn trees, like fists against the sky. For a while, nothing happens, but you start to notice changes in Cain. He doesn't sweat. His lips never crack. His breath comes steady even when the oxen begin to struggle. At night, he walks barefoot on the salt without wincing, and he speaks to things in the dark softly like greeting old friends. You don't see who or what responds, but something does. Historically, the Egyptian desert wasn't just feared for its heat, it was seen as a liminal space. A spiritual borderland. Gods lived in the Nile Valley, monsters lived in the waste beyond. But Cain seems more at home here than he ever did in the palace. You pass an abandoned shrine, half buried, eaten by time. He stops, dismounts, and kneels before it, not to pray, to listen. He places one palm flat on the stone and closes his eyes. Later he murmurs, "This place was once alive." You don't ask what he means. On the 10th day, the oxen refuse to move. The salt flats shimmer with unbearable brightness. The heat bends the horizon. You've run out of figs and the water jars are near dry. And still Cain walks. He lets the sled fall behind the driver, slumping beside it in silent exhaustion. You follow him, boots cracking the salt like sugar glass. That's when you see it. A glint, not of water, but stone, greenish iridescent, half swallowed by the sand. A dome. No, an arch, organic in shape like a ribcage grown from marble. You've reached it, the oasis of living stone. It shouldn't be here. There's no vegetation, no animals, no water. But the air changes. Cooler, damp. Inside, the structures are not quite built and not quite grown. Petrified trees twist up into vaults. Pools of dark liquid, not water, not oil, shimmer in grooves carved by nothing you recognize. And the walls breathe, gently, in, out. You turn to Cain. He's already kneeling, his eyes closed, his mouth forming a name. And in the shadows ahead, something stirs. A scorpion, but not like before. This one is human height, and walking upright. You don't scream. That's good, because the thing in front of you, tall as a man glinting like obsidian under moonless light, doesn't seem interested in panic. It moves with precision, each step placing its spiked limbs with a dancer's calm. Its face isn't a face exactly, more like a mask, sleek, bone-pale, featureless, except for two slits where eyes should be. But Cain isn't afraid. He stands slowly as if waking from a pleasant nap. "She sent you," he says, not a question, but a recognition. The scorpion creature tilts its head. Then it steps aside, revealing something behind it, a platform. Stone bone. You can't quite tell. On it lie two cushions, worn but clean, and a shallow bowl filled with that same shimmering black liquid you saw earlier, thick as syrup, glittering faintly from within. You and Cain approach. He doesn't hesitate. You'd think he'd be cautious, considering the last time he let a divine being sting him, he spent a week hovering near death. But no. He kneels before the bowl, breath steady. And then he drinks. Not a sip. All of it. You flinch. For a moment, nothing. Then his back arches. Not violently, just enough to feel unnatural. His skin ripples with light, as though he's swallowed the reflection of a torch. The air pulses once, and then he exhales calmly, as though he'd just tasted something bitter and comforting all at once. "I feel quiet," he says. Historians still argue whether this moment, recorded only in scraps of forbidden scrolls, is literal or symbolic. Some believe this was a real rite, the second venom, a lost ritual involving a mix of scorpion venom, opiates, and powdered lapis, meant to induce a state of divine perception. Others claim it was a mythologized puberty, his second birth, when the sickly boy finally became the desert's prince. But you saw it. You were there. It wasn't symbolic. It was a meeting. The creature steps forward again. This time it raises one hand and pulls something from its own chest. Not violently, deliberately, a single black barb shaped like a crescent moon. You recognize it. Circuit's sting, or at least a fragment of it. It places the barb in Cain's palm. He doesn't close his fist around it. He lets it lie there like a heartbeat waiting for its next rhythm. And now it's Eset who enters the vision. Not physically, no. This place wouldn't allow her. But Cain sees her. In the wall, the floor, the very breath of the stone. Her image forms in the air beside him, smiling faintly, lips pressed, as if holding back a sarcastic comment, the way she always did. "You're late," she says, voice ghost sweet. "I almost turned into a queen just to spite you." Cain chuckles. "They'd never let you near a crown." "Exactly why I'd wear one sideways." He reaches for the image. She fades. He doesn't cry, but the stone beneath him darkens as if absorbing something warm. You wander deeper into the oasis, following veins of soft light and strange textures, ridges that feel more like fossilized cartilage than rock. One wall opens into a dome. Inside, a low hum vibrates through your bones. The ceiling is carved, or perhaps grown, with scenes from lives not lived. Cain, ruling as a god-king, Eset, leading warriors from the back of a golden jackal, children with eyes like scarabs, cities made of crystal and sand. You recognize them, and yet you don't. Possible futures, past lives, maybe both. One carving shows Cain older, regal, his back straight, and skin glowing faintly. Behind him, a shadow in the shape of a scorpion. Another shows him lying beside a woman hand in hand, buried beneath flowering trees. And a third. He is alone, but smiling, a quiet smile. You find him there, kneeling still. Hours may have passed, or days. You saw her, you say. Yes. Was it real? He opens his hand. The barb is gone, but a mark remains, an indigo crescent burned into his palm. She's waiting, he says. The sun begins to rise over the salt flats outside. You hadn't noticed it had set. Cain walks toward it. No oxen, no sled, just the rising heat and the endless shimmer of horizon. His steps leave no prints. As you follow, the oasis disappears behind you. Literally, the arch collapses into dust. The walls deflate like breath held too long. In minutes, it's gone, just a blank place in the desert where nothing should have existed. But something did, and something still follows. That night, as you rest by a crumbling obelisk, you feel it a pulse under the sand. Not threatening, familiar, like the ground itself remembers your heartbeat. Khan does not sleep. He stands under the stars, staring at Scorpio's tail. I think it's time, he says. Time for what? He smiles, that faint, amused Scorpion Prince smile. To sting. Dawn over the desert doesn't arrive softly today. It burns in fierce immediate, as though the sky has finally decided to stop pretending to be gentle. The light slices across the sand in sharp lines, glinting off Cain's skin like he's been dipped in bronze. You follow him in silence, his pace easy, almost lazy, as if the desert walks with him now, not against him. He doesn't talk much, but something's brewing behind his eyes, some tight calculation you can't quite read. And you've learned not to ask. The prince who once clutched his ribs and whispered to shadows has shed that skin. What walks beside you now is something else. Still human, but only just. You reach the edge of the salt flats and the beginning of the bone dunes named charmingly for the fossilized ribs and skulls of ancient beasts poking from the sand. Think hippo-sized crocodiles, horned giraffes, and whatever that spiral-jawed nightmare is half sunken into a dune. And then you see them. Riders. Bronze chariot invaders. 36 at first. Then a full column, gleaming helmets, leather whip reins, wheels slicing the sand in ruthless symmetry. Their flag carries the hawk sigil of a northern city-state, the kind that builds its economy on raiding border temples and enslaving desert tribes, the kind that burns shrines and claims its cultural purification. Cain watches them from a low ridge. They'll head east, you guess, gesturing toward the Nile curve beyond the dunes. He shakes his head. They'll stop at the oasis. You turn to him. What oasis? The living stone one's gone. He smirks. Exactly. He's already walking. Now you'd expect him to make camp, plan a defense, maybe write an epic speech about justice and vengeance. But no, he simply walks directly toward the column. No weapon, no army, not even a camel. You hurry after him, heartbeat thudding. The first scouts spot him by mid-morning. One of them raises a horn. Another knocks an arrow, but hesitates. The commander's chariot halts. Dust swirls. Cain steps forward, raising one hand lazily. Tell your captain, he says, voice steady, the oasis is cursed. Tell him the goddess who made it has taken it back. The captain, a brick of a man with a sunburned nose and bad intentions, laughs loudly, then orders Cain bound. The soldiers don't move. Not yet. One of them looks down. His foot's already bleeding. Scorpions sting. Then another scream. The wind shifts. From the dunes, a sound rises. Not thunder, not wind. A hiss. Long, low, unending. Like the entire desert has opened its mouth. They're everywhere. Scorpions. Tens of thousands. Pouring from cracks in the bone dunes, writhing over the ridge like a living tide. And not your average backyard stingers either. These are massive, armored, some glowing, faintly blue, some black, as pitch their pincers clicking in chaotic rhythm. It's not an attack, it's a migration, a divine procession. The soldiers panic. Horses rear, chariots tip, arrows fly uselessly. One man tries to stab the ground. It stabs him back. Cain doesn't flinch. The tide parts around him. The creatures crawl over his feet, up his arms, and settle on his shoulders, forming what looks eerily like a cloak of living armor. The captain draws his sword. You want to shout to stop him, but it's too late. He lunges. Cain moves once. The cloak strikes. Not fast, not loud, just a flick of tail and shadow. The captain freezes mid-step, then drops. No blood, no sound, just stillness. And then finally silence. Cain turns to the remaining soldiers who have either dropped their weapons or dropped their lives. He raises one hand again. This desert has a goddess, he says softly, and she remembers. The scorpions vanish as quickly as they came, receding, like a tide slipping into cracks and burrows, leaving no trace but a few scuffed footprints and a commander-shaped silhouette in the sand. You follow Cain away from the carnage. He doesn't gloat, doesn't grin, just walks. You didn't kill them all, you say? No. Why not? They'll talk. You want them to talk. Yes, he says, brushing a tiny copper-colored scorpion from his sleeve. Fear is faster than armies. Historians still argue whether this battle, if it even qualifies as one, ever happened. There are no official records of it in northern military archives, but curiously no raids occurred along that southern stretch of desert for over a century afterward. And among local tribes, a new story emerged of the Poison Prince, the boy who commanded the sting and walked unharmed through dunes where even spirits feared to tread. Back at the ridge, you pause and look out over the salt flats. Nothing moves, not wind, not beast, just a stillness that settles over the landscape like ash after fire. You ask him what's next. He shrugs. Back to her, to Eset, to the only one who isn't afraid of me. You nod. But you wonder, because now, after what you just saw, you're starting to be just a little afraid of him yourself. The road back to the capital is less of a journey and more of a reckoning. You walk beside Cain through burned horizons and breeze-stiffened stillness, his sandals never stirring more than a whisper of dust. He doesn't speak much. You're not sure if it's the weight of what happened at the dunes or what's about to. The rumors outpaced you, of course. Word traveled fast. Riders galloped across oases and village markets. The scorpions obey him. The invaders fled without drawing blood. The goddess walks beside him. People whispered his name as both prayer and warning. The guards at the border checkpoint bowed without asking questions. One even offered him a fig. You're back in the capital before sunrise when the walls glow with the faintest warmth, and the city hasn't decided yet whether it will wake in peace or panic. The palace is quiet. Too quiet. No runners, no drums, no fanfare. Just a single servant girl, barefoot sleepy, who opens the gate and then immediately scurries out of sight. Cain walks in like he never left, and the walls seem to shrink around him now. The garden where he once fed dates to birds, smaller. The marble corridors where his sandals once echoed with uncertainty, now hushed with anticipation. The guards avoid his gaze. The statues seem to lean inward as if hoping not to be chosen. Even the cats give him space. And then there's Eset. You find her where she always waited in the pergola shade among curling fig leaves and lazy bees. She doesn't run to him. She doesn't cry. She just tilts her head and says, "Took you long enough." Cain kneels beside her. You still hate crowns. She shrugs. Not if it fits sideways. They sit in silence. You could bottle that moment honestly. Two people forged in fever dreams and venom finally still. It's not grand. It's not dramatic. But it's real. Of course it doesn't last. Because when the Queen Mother learns her son has returned, there is no joyous reunion, no whispered blessings, no weeping embrace. She appears flanked by guards. Not the palace guard, but the temple guard. Priests in linen and bronze faces painted for ritual. She does not speak his name. Instead, she says, "The gods demand purity." Oh boy, that again. This time, they don't try to trick him with oil and chant. They move to seize him outright. 4 guards lunge forward, and for the first time, Khan does nothing. Because Eset does. She stands. She raises one hand, and something moves beneath her tunic. A single scorpion white as bone crawls out onto her forearm. It raises its tail, quivering like an arrowhead. The guards stop mid-step. One drops his spear. She shares the sting, Cain says softly. The Queen Mother's eyes widen, not with rage, but fear. And you feel it too, don't you? This is no longer about a sickly prince saved by a strange goddess. This is about transmission. Not poison, but legacy. Eset walks toward the Queen Mother. Not fast, not threatening. Just calm. She places something at the woman's feet. A silk cloth, pale blue, with a single tiny stinger tucked inside. You sent him into the desert, she says. He brought back a kingdom. That line, that becomes famous, by the way, eventually carved into door lintels and inked into scroll margins. But in this moment, it's a death knell. The Queen Mother turns silent and leaves the hall. She is never seen again. Historians still argue whether she was exiled, executed, or simply consumed by her own ambitions. Some say she went willingly into a temple crypt. Others believe Serket took her one sting and gone. You follow Khan and Iset to the center of the palace. The throne room has been untouched since he left. Dust hangs in the beams. The royal seat gleams dully in the dim morning light. He doesn't sit on it. He walks past it through the arch beyond to the temple annex no one's entered in years. The place where the dead gods were stored, the forgotten ones, the ones too strange or inconvenient for polite worship. And there in the center of the dust, in incense and old bones, he builds a shrine. Not for himself, for her, Serket. 3 scorpions guard it, living silent loyal. Iset hangs a garland of dried blue lotus petals from the altar. Cain places a stone bowl of water clear and rippling despite the stillness. And then they wait. Not for worshippers, not for prayers, for change. Because from that day forward, things shift. No more forced offerings, no more purity trials, no more child priests or oaths of fear. Instead, the city becomes quiet, thoughtful, a place where healing doesn't come from bloodletting or gods with spears, but from slow poisons that teach the body to survive. Even the sick are brought to the palace now, not to be judged, to be treated. And you sit at the edge of the garden watching scorpions nap in the sun. Birds chirp overhead. Someone plays a reed flute in the distance, the notes rising like smoke. You'd almost forget what came before. Almost. You would think a kingdom ruled by a venom-kissed prince and a barefoot snake-catching girl would collapse within a season, that the priests would revolt, that the nobles would poison each other to pieces, that the people would abandon their markets and flee into the desert screaming about the end times. And yet, they don't. They adapt, because fear, once it burns out, often becomes fascination. You wander through the capital weeks later, and you start to see things you hadn't before. A healer on the corner wraps a child's arm with bandages soaked in scorpion oil. A merchant sells amulets shaped like barbed tails for strength. The temple doors stay open late into the night, not for sermons, but for silence, people just sitting with their thoughts, and that strange low hum from beneath the floor. Khan doesn't call himself king, not once. The throne still gathers dust. He leads from the shade of the garden or the temple steps, or while walking barefoot through the streets, nodding at old women and children and dogs. He gives no decrees, only suggestions. And yet the city listens. Iset, meanwhile, has made friends with the library cats. She spends hours there, hunched over old scrolls with ink on her elbows, giggling to herself. Once you catch her sketching a fish with scorpion legs. She claims it's aspirational, but not everyone's amused. Because power, especially the quiet kind, has a way of stirring old ghosts. One evening, as you and Cain walk the southern wall at dusk, you see it a plume of dust on the horizon. Too fast for weather, too straight for caravans. A procession, clad in gold and white. With banners you recognize sun discs, not just any city-state. The old enemy, the priests of Rai. The same faction that exiled Serket's cult centuries ago, who once burned her statues and buried her name beneath others more convenient. And now they've come back. Diplomats, they claim. Peacemakers. They bring gifts, lapis bowls, lion pelt spiced honey. They bow, smile, compliment Eset's earthy poise and Cain's transcendent calm. You're not buying it. Neither is Cain. Still, he lets them speak. Their message is subtle, clever, dripping with honeyed warnings. The people of the north are concerned. They whisper of shadows in the south of poison turned to power. They ask if old gods now speak through young mouths. We suggest a union, a spiritual alignment. Let the northern temples absorb this new movement. Let us be your voice. And in return, we will grant you recognition. Recognition. What a delightful euphemism for absorption. Eset yawns loudly during the third speech. Cain, ever polite, listens to the end, then offers only 2 words. We decline. The diplomats do not return smiles, nor do they return north, at least not whole. Because that night something moves through their camp. Not an army, not even a mob. Just silence, followed by screams. You're not invited to that part of the evening. But the next morning their tents are gone. Their camels are still tethered wide-eyed and sweating. The gold is untouched, but their scrolls all burned. Carefully, one small pyre of ash where maps once lay, and beside it a white scorpion coiled in sleep. Historians still argue whether this was self-sabotage or sabotage. Northern records blame a rival envoy. Fringe scholars whisper about the stinging ones, a rumored order of priestesses loyal only to Serket, operating in shadows like smoke with fangs. But you saw it. You saw Esset slip away that night and return with soot on her fingertips. The city does not celebrate. There is no festival, just a collective exhale, a quiet understanding that things have changed, that this is no longer a kingdom waiting for permission to exist. It simply does. And the gods, they've stopped whispering because they're watching now. One evening, you sit in the garden with Esset as she slices figs, dropping them lazily into a bowl. Cain naps beside her, one hand curled under his cheek, the faint shimmer still tracing his skin whenever the wind shifts. You ask her, do you think it's permanent, what he became? She shrugs. All things rot, but some rot. Well, that night, you dream of walking barefoot through the salt flats, guided only by a trail of glowing scorpions. And when you wake, the sound of stone breathing follows you into daylight. You wake to a palace on edge, not loudly, not with horns or swords or flaming chariots bursting through gates. No, this is subtler, a tightening in the air, servants folding linen twice as neatly, courtiers avoiding eye contact just a moment too long, cats hissing at corners where no breeze passes. You recognize it now, not fear, not yet, but the early aroma of a crisis. Cain notices too. He says nothing, just moves through the halls more slowly like he's reading the tension off the walls. His scorpion Teka is larger now, almost comically so, and rides his shoulder like a smug little crown. It chitters once as Cain passes the armory. Aset, meanwhile, is in the library, elbow deep in scrolls she claims are for recreational study, but you've seen the diagrams. Anatomical charts, venom flow, nerve networks, a whole section marked application beyond cure. You ask her what's going on. She doesn't look up. Something sick, she says. You wait. In the palace, you guess. In him, she says. And you realize she's right. Cain is changing. Again. His eyes no longer catch the sun the same way. His breath mists slightly even in the heat. He moves with grace, yes, but too much grace, like someone who no longer depends on muscle and tendon, but something deeper. Something exoskeletal. At night, he walks the halls without sound. Guards report seeing him in two places at once. A bird crashes into a window and dies. He places one hand on it, and it flutters back to life, then flies in reverse. Something is wrong or evolving. Historians still argue what this phase meant. Some believe it was symbolic, a moment of spiritual transcendence when Cain was nearing full deification. Others interpret it as decay, the slow price of borrowing a goddess's biology. Fringe theories, they go wild. One scroll even claims Cain began to split a duplicate growing within him, a younger, purer version crawling beneath his skin, waiting to shed the older frame. But the people don't notice, or maybe they don't want to, because the harvests are better than ever. Plague hasn't struck in years. The guards haven't drawn blades in months. And the water level in the Nile mysteriously holds steady even during dry season. Whatever's happening, it's working. Until the cats start dying. At first, just one, then three. Then an entire alleyway behind the western courtyard is found silent, littered with curled, lifeless shapes, tails, tucked ears, flat blue tinges around their mouths. Blue, like Cain's lips once were. You follow the trail. It leads not to the shrine, not to Eset's garden, but to his room. You stand outside the carved stone door palm, flat against it. There's no sound inside, no scent, not even breath, just a presence, like something waiting on the other side of a mirror. Then the door opens. He's there, barefoot, bare-chested, skin glowing faintly like moonlight filtered through wax. His eyes are wrong now, wider, lidless irises flickering like candle flames. You flinch, just slightly. He sees. And something in his posture softens, not defensively, but mournfully. You're afraid now, he says. You don't answer, because you are. He steps back, lets you in. The room is simple, bare stone, one mat, one bowl of water that never seems to ripple. On the wall, the same mural you saw in the oasis of living stone. Different lives, different endings. He touches it. They're blending, he murmurs, the dreams and the days. I don't know which version I'm in anymore. You step beside him. Does Iset know? She feels it, he says, but she still sees me. You ask what's causing it. He opens his palm. In the center, that crescent mark, the sting, still there, but now cracked. Fissures forming outward like a dried riverbed. The venom is aging, he says, or I am. Then she's calling me again. You know who he means. Serket. He turns to you, and for the first time you see fear in his eyes. I don't know what she wants. That night, the palace doesn't sleep. There's no reason. But everyone feels it. A stillness under the earth. A pressure in the air. The shrine breathes louder. The temple pool ripples without wind. And in the main courtyard, something is left on the stones. A single perfect scorpion, dead, turned to glass. Its tail curled in a question mark. The next morning doesn't arrive. It crawls in slow and brittle like something shedding a skin. The city wakes cautiously. You feel it in the way the fig vendors unwrap their baskets more slowly, in how the palace scribes linger over each stroke, hands trembling just slightly. Even the fountains, usually babbling away like children mid-story, have gone mute. The water moves, but it doesn't speak. You wander the western wing, the oldest part of the palace. It smells like dried papyrus and sandstone sweat. You're following something, not a sound, not a scent, but an instinct, a pull in your chest. And then you hear it. Scratching, soft, rhythmic. You turn a corner and find a door you've never noticed before. It's open. Inside, the walls are painted with coiled tails and stinger symbols. A forgotten chapel, a crypt no. It feels active, as if someone's been praying here in secret. And there she is, the Queen Mother, alive, or at least something wearing her shape. She's kneeling facing the wall, whispering to herself in a language you don't recognize. Her hair is down, her robes are frayed. She looks smaller than you remember, reduced not by age, but by regret. You step forward. She doesn't turn. You were right, she says. I should have let her have him fully, the first time. You ask her what she means. She sighs. You don't just borrow from gods, you owe. She stands. Her back cracks like a papyrus scroll. When she turns, her eyes are the color of scorpion shell, glassy bronze, unblinking. She's taking him back, she says, piece by piece. You run, because you know where Khan is. He's back in the temple courtyard, standing in the center of a chalk circle, surrounded by bowls of water shards of turquoise and dried lotus petals. Asset's there too, chanting softly, hands trembling as she holds a copper blade, not meant for harm, but for balance. It's a ritual, a desperate one. You step forward, but Cain lifts one finger, stay back. His skin is glowing again, but now it pulses like a lantern about to shatter. You see fine lines crawling across his arm's veins. Cracks, you're not sure. They shimmer blue, faintly luminous. He's fragmenting, Esat says. She's trying to pull him down into the other place. You ask what the other place is. She doesn't answer. Instead, she plunges the blade into her own palm. You flinch. She doesn't. Blood deep red, defiantly human, drips into a bowl carved with scorpion motifs. She lifts it to Cain's lips. He drinks. The effect is immediate. The glow dims. The cracks halt. His breath shallow before deepens. His knees buckle and she catches him. But even as she holds him, his shadow writhes. Literally. On the stone behind him, his shadow is not his. It twitches, jerks, splits into pieces like a scorpion with too many legs. You all stare. It stares back. And then it runs. Across the wall, up the column, vanishing into the ceiling vault like a thing just woken. The courtyard goes still again. Cain sags in Esset's arms. I'm here, he murmurs. You believe him. Mostly. Later, the three of you sit beneath the fig trees. No one speaks. You listen to the wind, the fig leaves, the shuffle of small lizards passing through the warm dust. Then Cain speaks. There's a place I must go. Esset doesn't ask where. She knows. You do too. Back to the salt waste. Back to the one place the goddess stung him and let him live. It's exile again. Only this time, it's his choice. That night, you help them pack. Not much a satchel of linen, dried dates, 2 jars of fig wine, a bowl carved from obsidian for reasons no one explains, and the blade the one Iset bled for. At dawn, the city watches. Not a crowd, but eyes. From balconies, from rooftops, from the shadows of temple doors. They do not stop him. They do not bless him. They simply witness. Cain turns at the gates, glances back once, then steps into the dunes. Iset walks beside him. They vanish over the ridge without ceremony. Only the wind marks their passing. The sun climbs, and then, as if exhaling, a single fig drops from a tree and splits. Inside, a scorpion, sleeping, curled like punctuation. The dunes seem to remember him. Each step Khan takes leaves no mark, as if the desert is gently smoothing the path behind him, hiding his trail not to erase him, but to protect him. Iset walks just slightly behind now, quiet her gaze, fixed not on the horizon, but on his back, like she's memorizing the way his shoulders move beneath his robe. The heat is dry, sure, but bearable, as if the sun has reached an uneasy truce with them. You follow in silence, and the deeper you go, the less real time feels. The days don't pass. They fold. Nights arrive with no warning. Shadows grow sideways. You dream while awake and remember things that haven't happened. This is the salt waste, that broken region where even the stars seem tired of shining. The same place Cain was exiled 2 years ago. Only now it's not exile. It's homecoming. You reach it by dusk, the place where the oasis of living stone once stood. Only now something else waits. No structures, no shimmer, just a ring of cracked white stone half swallowed by sand, and a single black scorpion the size of a puppy sitting in the middle like a pet waiting for its owner. Cain kneels. The scorpion climbs onto his shoulder, no hesitation. Iset watches. Her jaw tightens. He's already half there, she mutters. You ask what she means. She doesn't answer. Instead, she pulls a small object from her bag, the obsidian bowl. She places it at the center of the ring, right where the scorpion had been sitting, and begins to hum a low, tuneless sound that feels like breath turned into music. Cain joins her, and something begins to rise. Not from the sand from under it. The ground shifts, then pulses, then cracks, and from the center of the ring it comes. You remember it from before, only vaguely. That strange breathing, not quite organic structure, the one that looked carved by time, not hands. Now it's smaller, collapsing inward like lungs at the end of a sigh. The temple is dying, or molting. Inside, everything is dim, warm, still pulsing with life, but weaker now, like a heart in winter. You follow them into the chamber. This time, no upright scorpion greets you, no mirror visions, just silence. And a single slab in the center, shaped like a cradle and a coffin both. Cain steps onto it. Iset doesn't stop him. She just takes his hand and lowers the obsidian bowl beside him. Then she turns to you. She told me what to do, she says. You feel a chill. Who? Iset looks up at the dark ceiling as if it's not stone but sky. The goddess. You want to object, to scream, to pause, but it's too late, because Cain is already lying down, breathing slowly. The glow under his skin fading to a pale gold, and Iset is already moving. She takes a small vial from her robe. The venom inside is clear, almost pretty. She said he must die once more, she says, voice soft. To be born again, entirely. You ask, will he survive? She doesn't answer. She pours the venom into the bowl. The room tightens. The air collapses in your lungs. The stone beneath your feet hums louder, then quieter, then louder again. And Cain eyes still open smiles. Not at you. Not at Iset, but at something behind the veil of now. Then the sting. A flash of blue across his chest. His back arches once. Then stillness. Iset doesn't weep. She just sits beside him, watches. You wait unsure. 1 minute. Then 10. Stillness. Until a crack. Not in the temple. Not in the stone. In him. His lips part. And he exhales a mist. It rises, dances in the dark, and forms the shape of a scorpion. Glowing, alive. It hovers for a breath, then slips into the stone. Gone. Cain's eyes close. But his body does not cool. He is not gone. He is changing. Beneath his skin, the glow shifts again. Not just blue, now gold, violet, crimson. Colors of dusk, of poison, of dawn. Iset lies beside him, closes her eyes, and breathes in rhythm. Outside, the desert waits. No wind, no stars. Just the pause before something begins. The desert doesn't sleep. Not really. It holds its breath. Long after Iset and Cain lie still in the husk of the living temple, the sand outside shifts in tiny ways. Wind patterns circle and stall. Beetles stop mid-scuttle and wait, antennae twitching towards some frequency only they understand. Even the stars above pulse ever so slightly, like they too are watching this quiet rebirth. You step outside for a moment. You need to. The air inside had grown thick alive even. Breathing it felt like borrowing lungs that weren't yours. The sky is a bowl of ink rimmed with pale fire. In the distance, a jackal howls once, then nothing, and then you hear it. The hum. You've heard it before beneath temple floors in the shrine breath of Circuit in Cain's pulse when he'd touched the stones. But now it's not coming from below, it's coming from him. You run back inside. He's no longer lying in the cradle, he's floating. Just slightly an inch or two above the stone, his body arched backward, fingers curled like tendrils of smoke. His hair drifts around his face, weightless. The glow beneath his skin is now constant, like veins of molten amber. And Eset, she's sitting cross-legged below him, calm, steady. Her hands rest on her knees. A second scorpion curls gently around her wrist. She's not taking him, she says, without looking at you. She's finishing him. And you realize this isn't possession. It's a completion. The transformation Surkat began with that first sting all those years ago wasn't a gift. It was a seed. And now it's blooming. You stare at the floating boy. His body pulses not with light, but with memory, the memory of deserts of ancient bones of gods who were once beasts. You see flash images etched across his skin like moving tattoos. A lion devouring the sun. A woman made of stars, her spine a river. A boy walking backward through time. And all of them are him, or pieces of him. You step closer and he speaks, not aloud. Inside you. It's almost done. His eyes open. They're blank white, then shift in a blink to the palest gold. He lowers gently back onto the stone slab. Aset rushes forward, clutching his hand. Cain. He turns to her, smiles. But this isn't the soft, secret smile of a boy. It's a peaceful one. He looks at you next. It's not poison. It's inheritance. Then he sleeps. For 3 days. You and Eset stay beside him. You eat sparingly, drink dew from temple stone. The air inside never cools, never warms, it simply remains. A state of balance you've never known. On the third night, just after dusk, Cain rises. No announcement, no gasp, just a breath. And then he's standing. His skin no longer glows. It shines. Not like metal, like water, just before it's touched. He walks outside. You and Eset follow. No wind, no stars, just him. He kneels in the sand, places his hands on the ground, and speaks. I return what was borrowed. The earth shifts. Beneath your feet, a low vibration. Then cracks, tiny ones but hundreds, all across the dunes like spider webs or veins. And, from them, scorpions, thousands. But these are different, smaller, pale, glowing faintly blue. They don't crawl, they flow like liquid, toward Cain. Not to swarm, to bow. They form a circle around him, then another, a spiral of living armor, silent and reverent. And from above, you hear a sound like thunder, but there's no storm, just the clouds parting. And the constellation of Scorpio, pulsing. One star flashes brighter than the rest. Eset grips your arm. That's her. You nod. The goddess has returned, but she does not descend. She simply watches, because there's nothing more to do. He's hers, and hers alone. You don't move. You can't move. It's not paralysis, it's reverence. That kind of stillness, usually reserved for temple chambers or mountain peaks, or the instant right before a baby takes its first breath. Cain stands at the heart of the spiral, every scorpion motionless now. Their bodies form perfect rings, their tails curled inward like petals on a flower. They don't blink. They don't twitch. They wait. And above Scorpio pulses again. A slow, heavy flash, like a heartbeat. The desert seems to inhale, and then Cain speaks. She shows me the mirror. His voice is strange. Not in pitch, it's still his, but layered, echoing, as if two other voices hum just beneath it. One is soft, one is sharp, feminine, Circuit. He raises one hand. You see it trembling, not with fear, but with power held back. And before him, midair it appears, a mirror. No frame, no glass, just a thin shimmer, a slice in the air that bends the world around it. At first it reflects nothing. Then, something. A boy in royal linen, crowned and adored. A girl beside him, barefoot but regal. A kingdom thriving, children laughing, peace. Then the mirror shifts. Now it shows. The same boy alone, sitting on a throne of bone. Scorpions at his feet. A sky blackened with ash. Then another version, Cain as a healer dressed in plain robes tending to the sick in a city of domes made from petrified wood. Then another, Cain asleep in a tomb skin translucent, surrounded by glowing amber orbs filled with tiny writhing creatures like miniature scorpions. A future, a trap, a promise. The images keep coming. Dozens, hundreds. Each one a path his life could take, or did, or might still. Iset stares in silence. You glance at her and realize she sees something else. Her mouth opens, then closes. Her eyes fill, but no tears fall. Finally, she whispers, "They're all true." You ask her what that means, but Cain answers first. "I am not bound to one thread. No prince is." The mirror snaps shut with a soundless crack. Gone. The scorpions move again, slowly, deliberately. They begin to crawl, not toward him, but away. Back into the cracks. Back into the earth. One by one, tail by tail, like a retreating tide. You watch until the last one disappears beneath the sand with a quiet tick. And then silence. Real silence. No hum, no pulse, no echo. Even the stars seem to pause. Cain drops to his knees, not in collapse, in prayer, to what you're not sure. Maybe not to anyone, just to be still. Iset kneels beside him, says nothing, just presses her forehead to his. And time breathes again. Later, the two of them sit beneath a natural stone archway, weathered and crescent-shaped like the tip of a broken fang. You sit nearby, wrapped in a linen shawl that somehow smells faintly of myrrh. The sky is soft now, dawn approaching, but hesitant, like it's not sure it's welcome. You ask Cain what happens now. He doesn't speak for a long time. Then, "She gave me every ending. Now I choose." You ask, "Which one?" He looks at Iset. She looks at him. They both smile. The kind of smile people wear when they've already survived something impossible. The quiet one, he says. Iset adds, "Where we're just us." And you feel something in your chest unclench. There's no drama to it. No gods descending. No stars exploding. Just two people choosing peace. For now, because later, maybe another life. Maybe another mirror. But this one, this ending, it's theirs. You wake to laughter. Real laughter, bright, ridiculous, and echoing across a stretch of dune where laughter probably hasn't dared live in centuries. You sit up to see Iset standing on one leg, balancing a fig on her forehead, while Cain throws pebbles at a cluster of sleepy vultures overhead, trying to get them to show respect. It's absurd and perfect. Because for once, no one is glowing, no one is transforming. The gods are quiet, the scorpions stay buried, just heat breeze and two people making joy out of silence. They've made camp here on a plateau of white stone shaped like a fossilized wave. From above, it must look like a curling hand cradling the two of them. There's a pile of figs, a flask of cool water drawn from the last of the oasis stores, and a bowl of lotus root stew, which Iset insists is nutritionally catastrophic, but emotionally healing. You ask them if this is it, if this is where they'll stay. Iset shrugs. For now. Cain nods. For as long as we're not needed. That phrase, not needed. You realize how rare that is for someone once chosen by a goddess, once haunted by a constellation. But maybe that's the point. The next few days pass like dreams too easy to believe. Cain sings again. His voice is steadier now, deeper. Still that reed flute tremble, but fuller, like it carries not just music, but memory. Iset draws in the sand. Not spells, not maps, just weird animals. One she claims is a scorpion-goose hybrid with anxiety issues. You ask if she's still connected to the goddess. She smirks. She checks in like a strict aunt. At night, you lie beneath the stars, watching Scorpio glow soft, now warm. The light doesn't pulse anymore. It flickers, like a campfire, present but relaxed. One night, Cain speaks. "I think I understand the mirror now." You turn to him. "What do you mean?" He gestures to the sky, to the sand, to Iset curled beside him with a blanket wrapped around her like a burrito. It wasn't about choosing the right path. It was about seeing the paths and still walking. You feel that settle in your chest. Because there's something comforting in knowing you might have become a monster, or a king, or a healer, or a god. And instead, you became yourself. But the past doesn't dissolve completely. Not here. Not in this land where gods sleep lightly. One afternoon, a traveler finds them. A girl, maybe 12, wrapped in linen face, sunburned lips cracked. She says nothing, just walks into the camp, kneels and holds out her arms. And in her palms, Two scorpions. Alive. Unmoving. Balanced. Cain nods once. Aset beckons the girl forward. They feed her stew. Wash her face. She doesn't speak that first day, or the second, but by the third she laughs at one of Eset's stick-figure drawings and begins to hum just 3 notes, over and over. A song the goddess once sang. Maybe. Another mirror opens that night. You feel it not with your eyes, but somewhere behind your heartbeat. You don't see the mirror, but you know it's there, in the silence between stars. And Cain, he just smiles. We're not done, he says, but we're resting. Historians never record this part. They focus on the temple years, the Scorpion army, the poisoned prince, and the failed coup. But they miss this. The human years. The in-between. The chapters where peace is chosen daily, not declared in gold. And in the end, maybe that's why no one found a tomb. Maybe that's why no body was ever buried beneath the altar. Because some stories don't end in marble or fire. They end with 2 people sitting in the shade peeling figs and making fun of each other's dreams. The years slip by the way sand slips through a loose fist slowly and visibly until you look down and realize time's moved and all the lines on your hand have changed. Cain and Aset don't age in the usual way. They soften. Like sandstone after 100 kind breezes, his hair grows longer, streaked not with gray, but something silver blue, like the light in Scorpio's tail. Hers darkens somehow more shadow than sun eyes, deeper now, as though they've begun storing secrets in layers. And you begin to forget which parts of this life were once strange. The scorpions still visit, not in swarms, not in show. 1 or 2 will crawl into camp, curl into a corner, and sit for an hour, then vanish, like scouts, or old friends. Aset starts calling them listeners. They carry stories back, she says one morning, feeding one a crumb of flatbread. That's why they have so many legs, for walking between the worlds. Cain doesn't argue. He just smiles and sharpens a reed into a stylus. He's started writing again. Not in royal script, not with flourish, just clean marks on sheets of polished bark arranged in circles instead of lines. When you ask why, he shrugs. Linear memory was always too arrogant. Occasionally, a traveler finds them. Never twice, never the same kind. A priest once from the north, skeptical and tired. A widow holding a bottle of salt water she refused to explain. A boy with eyes too wide for his face who didn't speak, but somehow made every fig tree in the grove bloom at once. They stay for a night or 3. They leave with no visible miracles. But something always shifts. And then one day, something larger. You wake to a rumble not earth-shaking but deep. Like a sigh beneath the soil, the grove's fig leaves quiver, the air thickens, and from the south, smoke. Far off, faint but rising. Var. No, worse. A reckoning. You and Eset climb a ridge. Cain doesn't follow. He's still seated beneath the crescent arch, with his eyes closed, a bowl of honey and ash at his side. From the ridge, you see it. A caravan, but twisted. Not pilgrims, not traders. A procession of bone. Men with jackal skulls tied to their belts. Women cloaked in iron thread robes. One figure carries a brazier strapped to their back, flames licking upward, though there's no wood. You recognize the symbols they wear, the sigils of the ancient sun cleavers. A sect thought lost, scattered after Circuit's shrines were buried, exiled for trying to sever the old gods from their earthly tether. And now, they march for Cain. Aset watches them with the expression of someone reading a letter she's already memorized. They're coming to end the line, she says. You ask his. She doesn't answer. Back at camp, Cain opens his eyes before you speak. I've seen this thread before. They try to cauterize what they fear. Aset joins him kneeling. You watch as she pulls a vial from beneath her robe. It's the same one from before the venom, but thicker now, aged, the color of setting suns. She hands it to Cain, and he drinks. No ritual, no chanting, just to swallow a breath in silence. You wait for the light, for the glow. But instead, he grins. His teeth sharpen for a moment, then soften. Aset chuckles. Too much pepper, she says. They spend that day preparing. Not for war, for return. Because Cain will not fight. He will walk into the middle of the procession, alone, and let them see. Let them decide. Let them remember. That night, beneath a sky too crowded with stars, you lie awake and listen to Cain and Aset laugh. Not nervously, not sadly, but joyfully. Like 2 people who already chose their ending and are now just watching it arrive. The procession will come at dawn, and he'll meet them in silence. No scorpions, no weapons, just the weight of his body, and the memory of every mirror he chose not to follow. The procession crests the final ridge at sunrise. You stand beside Iset in the fig grove, the early light filtering through the leaves in gold-green sheets. Dew clings to every edge, and across the dunes the sun cleavers march slow, deliberate, and terrifying in their stillness. Not a chant, not a call. Just the soft clink of iron thread robes brushing against bone. Cain is already waiting. He's seated beneath the crescent stone arch again, legs folded, hands resting on his knees. His posture doesn't waver. He could be a statue or a prayer someone forgot to finish. The leader of the cleavers steps forward, a tall figure in white-stained black face hidden behind a mask shaped like a cracked solar disk. From the slits in the iron, only one thing is visible: fear. But the voice that comes through is strong. You've held the goddess too long. Cain doesn't blink. She chose to stay. We are here to sever her thread. You feel a shift in the ground, not shaking, more like retreat, as if the earth itself is backing away from what's about to happen. Cain rises. No fanfare, no glow, just presence. His body is leaner than it once was, not fragile, refined, like the desert has polished him down to essence. His eyes hold every version of him you've seen: the boy, with blue lips, the sandwalker, the mirror gazer. He steps forward, and the cleavers raise their hands, not in welcome, but in warning. One of them draws a blade, not metal, obsidian, dipped in glyphs meant to cut not flesh, but fate. Iset's breath catches. Her hand twitches toward her own pouch. You know what's inside: one last drop of aged venom. She doesn't reach for it. Not yet. Cain stops just 10 paces away from the line of robes and masks and lifts his hand. The cleaver's still. He extends a finger and draws a shape in the air, a circle. Inside it, nothing. But you feel it. An absence. Then a word, spoken not in sound but in pulse. Choice. That's it. Just that. And it breaks something. Not in the sky, not in the sand. In them. The one holding the obsidian blade lowers it, just slightly. Another steps back. A third removes their mask, revealing a face not of wrath, but of exhaustion. A woman, younger than you expected. Her eyes red-rimmed, not with rage, but weeping. We were told you stole her, she says. Cain steps closer. She gave herself. And I gave myself back. You want to breathe, but no one is breathing. Iset does finally, just one breath, sharp. Then she steps forward too, and opens her pouch. You expect the venom, but instead she pulls out something else. The glass scorpion. The one that appeared in the temple courtyard all those nights ago. She places it on the ground between them, and it moves, just slightly. Its legs twitch, and then it shatters, but not violently. It cracks into sand, shining black-blue grains. They blow across the boots of the cleavers. The leader looks down, steps forward, one pace, another, then kneels. Not deeply, not in surrender, in acceptance. The others follow. Not all, but enough. And Cain, he doesn't smile. He exhales, like a door closing gently. Behind him, the crescent arch gleams with a faint glow for just a moment, then fades. The sun cleavers don't retreat. They stay, not as conquerors, as students. For days, they sit in silence, listening to Iset's stories, to Khan's quiet lessons on what it means to carry something that isn't quite yours, and yet shapes you. You watch them unbind their robes, unstrap the bone charms, wash their hands in the temple bowl, and somewhere deep in the earth, the goddess hums, not a song of battle, not warning, a lullaby, one that sounds suspiciously like the tune Iset used to sing when Cain couldn't sleep. That night, the stars flicker, but Scorpio rests. In the days that follow, peace doesn't announce itself. It drips in like resin from a tree, slow golden and slightly sticky, the kind of peace that feels earned, not declared. The cleavers linger, no longer in columns or procession. Their robes are loosened, their weapons sheathed. They help Iset gather figs, kneel beside Cain as he shows them how to read dune patterns, and even more strangely, some begin to laugh. Awkward at first, as if their mouths had forgotten the shape of joy, but then easier, familiar. You watch them become people again. One builds a stone path between the grove and the sleeping temple. Another carves a flute from a desert reed. One night, two of them perform a shadow play on a linen sheet, telling a mangled but hilarious version of the story of Cain and the goddess. The scorpions are portrayed by pebbles with legs drawn on in charcoal. Eset howls with laughter. Cain smiles so wide it almost cracks his face. You think this is what salvation looks like. Not thunder, not divine light. Just a community being rebuilt from fragments. But even in peace, something stirs beneath the surface. One evening, Eset pulls you aside. She's found something. Buried at the edge of the grove, a fragment of obsidian warm to the touch, etched with a glyph neither of you recognize, circular with a spiral tail and a dot in the center. You show it to Cain. He studies it for a long time, then says, "It's hers, not Serket's, the first goddess, the one who preceded even the desert gods, the scorpion beneath the scorpion." You ask if she's coming. Cain shakes his head. She never left. That night, the fig trees bloom again, all of them, at once, despite the season, despite the soil. Eset just stares at the blossoms, then says, "This feels suspicious." Cain laughs. So does breathing sometimes. But the truth is, something's growing again. Not just figs, not just stories. Something old is awakening. And it doesn't bring fear. It brings curiosity. The next morning, Cain stands at the crescent arch, now smoother, polished by time or presence, or both. He traces the stone with his fingers, then steps through it. On the other side, nothing but desert. But to him, it is possibility. He turns to you and Eset. It's time to walk. You ask where. He smiles. Further. Eset grumbles but grabs her satchel anyway. Better not be uphill. The cleavers form a loose circle, not to block him, to bless him. One offers him a shell filled with salt. Another presses a fingertip to his forehead. No rights, no rules. Just quiet respect. You walk with him for a while. The sand is soft. The sky is vast. The temple shrinks behind you. Cain hums a tune. You think it might be the same lullaby from the old shrine. Or maybe it's new. And then suddenly, he stops. Not from fear, but from knowing. The horizon splits, just slightly, and on the other side of it, a place made of mirrors, not reflective glass, but possibility. Every step forward from here is a new thread. Every breath, a choice. The goddess is not here to lead anymore. She watches. She waits. But she does not command. This next part, it's Cain's. Eset steps through first. Turns back, extends her hand. "Come on," she says. You follow. And the desert sighs, as if relieved. Because the stung prince, he didn't become a god. He didn't become a tyrant. He became a mirror with legs reflecting everything he could have been, and still choosing this. The farther you go, the less the world seems tethered to shape. The sand begins to ripple in slow-motion waves, never quite rising, never quite still. The sky deepens into a shade of violet that shouldn't exist outside of twilight. Clouds hover too low, as if listening. Your footprints vanish almost instantly, but not from wind, from forgetting. And yet Cain remembers everything. Every step is intentional. Every pause is weighted. Eset trails behind today, walking backward, squinting into the distance, as though watching something no one else can see. You ask her what. She says all the versions of us that turn back. A pause. Then none of them made it this far. Eventually, you crest a hill, not a sand dune, but something older, petrified. The ridge is bone-colored, ribbed like a fossilized whale spine. At the top, you see it. A structure, circular, sunken, half buried in the ground. Not stone, not wood. Something that breathes, just barely. Cain leads you in. There are no doors, just archways curved like jaws. Inside, silence. But it's the warm kind, the kind old libraries carry, or deep caves that remember lullabies. The light filters through slits in the ceiling, casting shimmering stripes on the floor, like a tiger is sleeping somewhere above. And in the center of the chamber, a bowl, massive, hollowed from something that was never quite alive but never quite dead. Inside, a black liquid. Still, Cain approaches. You follow instinctively. Eset does not. She remains at the edge, eyes narrowed. "I've read about this," she says quietly. "They called it the Cradle of Split Names. A temple. No, a test. Legend says that only those who've carried more than one version of themselves can approach without shattering. That the bowl doesn't reflect your face, but all your unlived lives. The ones you turned away from. The ones that turned away from you." Cain kneels, looks in, and smiles. You step closer, peer into the bowl. You see not a reflection but a rotation, a swirl of timelines. Cain as a tyrant king, his veins black with venom cities burning in his wake. Cain as a hermit alone in the salt flats, cradling a scorpion like a child. Cain as a healer wandering from village to village, leaving health and fear in equal measure. Cain dead at 13, buried with honors in a tomb too large for his story. Each one flickers past like a coin spun too fast to read. And then you see this Cain, the one beside you, the one who chose peace and figs in a set's terrible singing. And somehow, he's the only one smiling. That's when the bowl begins to glow. Not gold, not blue, but clear. As if for the first time in centuries, it's holding water that's purely present. Cain dips one finger in. The liquid shudders, then rises, forms into a shape above the bowl. A woman's face, Serket, but younger, uncrowned, barefoot. She doesn't speak. She just nods, and you feel it like thunder in your chest. She releases him. That's what this was. Not a claim, not a punishment, a loan. And now he is free. The vision fades. Cain exhales. The liquid sinks back. Still again. He doesn't weep. But something in his shoulders loosens something that's been coiled since the moment he was first stung. Iset walks over now, wraps her arms around him from behind. Done, she asks. Almost, he says. He reaches into his robe and pulls out the last piece. The obsidian bowl from their exile days. He pours the clear liquid from the great bowl into it carefully, reverently, then places it at the edge of the chamber. For the next one, he says. And you understand, this isn't the end of a journey. It's a trail marker. Cain didn't come to claim anything. He came to leave something behind, a chance, for whoever dares to carry more than oneself. As you step back into the desert light, the structure behind you fades, not vanishing, but blending, returning to myth. The wind shifts, and, for the first time in days, there are no scorpions, only footprints, yours, Cain's, Eset's, heading toward whatever comes next. And above you, Scorpio burns steady, but no longer watching, just shining. The sky turns amber before it turns dark, not the kind of twilight that signals an end, but the kind that opens a doorway, softly, respectfully, like a curtain pulled back, rather than dropped. You walk now with Cain and Eset, not through exile, not toward prophecy, but simply forward. The desert begins to change again, not in dramatic ways, subtle ones. The sand softens underfoot like velvet draped over bone. The wind no longer stings, it carries a scent, warm dates iron old ink. You pass stones stacked into cairns, ancient waymarks carved with glyphs too worn to read. Some are shaped like animals, hawks, jackals, and scorpions. Cain pauses at one. This one's mine, he murmurs, brushing dust from the tail of a scorpion-shaped cairn. Eset raises an eyebrow. You have a rock fan club. He grins, just admirers with chisels. She rolls her eyes and draws a small heart next to the glyph using her dagger's tip. You walk on. Ahead, the landscape dips into a basin, not wide, not deep. But as you crest the slope, your breath catches. At the bottom, a town, tiny, circular, but alive. Houses shaped from the earth, not built on it, walls made of clay, and riverstone rooftops grown over with grass and fig saplings. People move slowly between the buildings, their robes simple, their steps measured. But there's no fear in their eyes when they look up and see the three of you. Only recognition, as if they've been waiting. An elder steps forward, a woman with silver hair bound into a crown of braided reeds. She smiles at Cain, says one word, welcome. That night, they give you a house. Small, round, warm, with a roof that opens to the stars and a mat that smells like wild thyme. You eat with your hands. You drink from a clay cup passed around a circle. A child falls asleep against Cain's side. Eset teaches two teenagers how to wrestle properly. Don't aim for the face unless you really mean it. You ask the elder who built this place. She says the goddess planted the idea. We just watered it. No temples here. No altars. Just gardens, where figs and scorpions live without conflict. The town doesn't worship Serket. They remember her, like a friend who once stayed for dinner and never quite left. Over the next days, you feel your body begin to change, not dramatically, not mystically, but gently. Your breath comes easier, your thoughts slow, not in confusion, in calm, like your mind has finally stopped fighting the wind. Cain settles in as though he's always been here. He teaches without meaning to demonstrating how to read the movement of clouds for water, how to mark time by the color of beetle shells. He teaches a little boy how to find a scorpion's burrow and not panic. He tells stories, even the old ones, even the dark ones, but never with bitterness. Always with that soft, dry humor that makes the edges safe to hold. Iset, meanwhile, starts a garden, but not of plants, of words. She gathers the town's stories, writes them in spirals, paints them onto smooth stones, arranges them around her house in patterns only she understands. When you ask what they mean, she just says, "If the goddess visits again, I want her to have something to read." One night, you sit with them beneath the open roof. No words, just stars. And Colin whispers, "I think this is the mirror I chose." Iset, eyes half closed, murmurs, "It chose you too." You fall asleep to the sound of breathing. 3 rhythms. One human, one divine, one perfectly in between. Morning comes not with a blaze, but a hush. A sky brushed with lavender and apricot. Birds chirp not in chorus, but in single sleepy notes, as if testing the air. You open your eyes to sunlight pooling like honey across the clay floor. Iset is already up scribbling glyphs onto the wall in fresh ochre tongue between her teeth, humming something tuneless. Cain is out front brewing tea over a tiny fire. It smells like mint and stone. You sit beside him. He doesn't speak for a while. Then he hands you a cup. It's almost time. You ask for what? He shrugs, smiles faintly. Not everything needs to be written down. Later that day, the town gathers. Not in urgency, just instinct. By the central fig tree, older than any of the houses, its roots so wide, they cradle the entire square like fingers around a bowl. Blankets are spread. Fruit is shared. A breeze moves through like a remembered lullaby. Cain and Iset sit in the center. They hold hands. No speeches, no ceremonies. But one by one people come forward. They bring small things. A carved bead, a dried petal, a tiny bird's skull painted with stars. And they place them at Cain's feet, not as tribute, but as thanks. Not for saving them, for choosing them. A child climbs into his lap. He tells her a story about the time Iset tried to befriend a crocodile and nearly lost a sandal. Iset corrects him, "I did befriend it. We just disagreed on footwear boundaries." Everyone laughs, and the sky glows. Evening comes, and with it change. You see it in the corners of the village where vines you hadn't noticed begin curling into symbols. In the sand near your house where scorpion tracks form perfect spirals. In the water jugs where the surface ripples without touch. Serket is near. But she doesn't appear. She's here, yes, but only in presence. Like warmth from coals long after the fire is out. Cain begins to hum. You've heard the tune before. Soft, simple. The lullaby from the shrine. The mirror, the desert. Iset joins in, and the town listens. Not because they're told to, but because it feels like a heartbeat. Afterward, you walk with him one last time through the garden. Iset planted the one where fig trees grow in the shape of constellations. He stops beneath one, places a hand on the bark. You see the sting mark on his palm glow faintly, just once, then fade. "It's finished," he says. You ask what is. He looks up at the stars. All of it. He doesn't mean his life. He means the curse, the debt, the sting. The borrowed breath from a goddess who wanted someone to carry more than power, someone to carry choice. The villagers don't wake to find him gone. He never disappears. He just shifts. One day he's sitting on the wall, the next tending the fire, then not there, but always near. Sometimes the fig tree hums. Sometimes the scorpions gather in perfect circles and face the sunrise. Sometimes children dream of a man with pale gold eyes who tells them not what they will be, but what they could be. You ask Iset if she misses him. She says not really. He's in everything now. Even the tea tastes smug. You smile, because he's not gone. He's returned to where he began, to where he was stung, to where he chose not to rule the world, but to heal it quietly, one child at a time, one mirror at a time, one dream at a time. Now close your eyes. Let the sound of desert wind drift through your thoughts, warm and steady like breath beneath linen. Picture the soft curve of dunes just kissed by starlight, a fig tree full and heavy with fruit, a bowl of water still as glass. No movement, just invitation. And beyond all of it, a path that curves into the dark, a trail made not of stone or dust, but of choices, quiet ones, the kind that don't make it into songs but shape everything. You're walking that path now. Not hurried, not hunted, just at peace. Let your feet sink gently into sand that remembers. Let your hands rest, knowing nothing needs holding right now. Let your breath slow to match the hum of the earth beneath you. Because tonight, no gods are watching. They're resting. Like you feel the weight of stories slip from your shoulders. Every mirror you've ever feared now reflects only stillness. The goddess is far away. Or maybe she's curled just beside you, sleeping in the shadow of your heartbeat. You're safe. You're remembered. And you are enough, no matter which path you walk tomorrow. Let the hum fade. Let the fig leaves fall. Let the sand keep your dreams warm until morning. Good night, traveler. And may every sting become a blessing.